good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you joined us this morning. If you did not stay up for the 5-decade-old tradition of the midnight vote in New Hampshire at Dixville Notch, let me give you your information. Nikki Haley swept the vote. All six eligible votes in the precinct. 4 registered Republicans and 2 undeclared voters pulled the lever for Haley. Now, just to keep this in mind, because the media is reporting this breathlessly, not necessarily saying it's any indication, just that they love the fact that Nikki Haley swept when the polls are showing that Donald Trump has done so well in New Hampshire. Dixville Notch has not predicted the outcome of a Republican New Hampshire primary since 2008, when then Senator John McCain of Arizona won the village, the primary, and the eventual GOP nomination. So back in 2008. Prior to 2008, the last time Dixville Notch foreshadowed a GOP primary outcome was 1992, when then President George W. Bush received 9 of the 14 Republican votes and turned aside a challenge from Pat Buchanan. Well, that's interesting. They've got a drop in registration there in Dixville Notch since 92. Now, keep in mind, in 2016, Trump was edged out, beaten 3 votes to 2 by Ohio Governor John Kasich, but went on to win the primary by 19 percentage points over Kasich. So there you go. Just a quick update on that. Again, if you did not stay up, we're going to be talking about New Hampshire here in a moment. I do have some New York State issues as well. I wanted to highlight that Nicole Van Fleet, she is the Guthrie Special Event and Annual Giving Officer. She'll be our guest coming up in just a little bit to tell us about the Valentine's Ball that will be on February the 10th at the Corning Museum of Glass. So that's coming up a little bit later on in the program. We're going to hear from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, released a statement yesterday, obviously about New York State issues. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But I wanted to start by telling you that Nikki Haley did sweep the first New Hampshire primary vote in that midnight tradition. Yes, they vote at midnight. And she won all 6 eligible votes. It's kind of interesting, the history of this. If that's something that interests you, I'm not going to get into the history. We just don't have the time. But we are going to tell you a little bit about what to expect today, maybe some things you didn't know about New Hampshire. This is many saying do or die, make or break for Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley has been going on the offense, questioning Trump's mental health, really realizing that she needs, well, originally they said they were going to win outright. Now saying they need a really strong showing going into South Carolina. So, but again, if you recall, DeSantis said that he was still going to stay in after Iowa, and then dropped out just the other day. So you never know what's really going on behind the scenes and what New Hampshire truly means for Nikki Haley. Okay, we're going to talk about New York State issues when we come back. As always, you see the number on the bottom of your screen, and thank you for the virtual wave already this morning. You can send a wave, or you can comment on the issues of the day. I always appreciate hearing from you. What do you think? What is your prediction for New Hampshire today? The polls show that Trump has a commanding lead. But again, I don't typically trust polls. And we'll talk about the numbers in a little bit. And again, what you need to know. We also have a few things here about the media. Man, interesting. Some attacks on Haley, which is kind of interesting because we've seen the media want to protect Haley in a way. We also have obviously seen some attacks on Trump and some really interesting issues coming out of the Biden administration. And a new book out that suggests that originally Harris was not Biden's first pick and did not believe she was ready for the job. Perhaps we'll mention that as well if we get a chance. But let's take our first break before we run too late. Just setting the scene here on this beautiful morning, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Our roof cam overlooking Market Street. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Did you see that Governor Hochul is getting some pushback? She appointed the daughter of a gambling lobbyist to New York's Gaming Oversight Board. Governor Kathy Hochul appointed the daughter of a veteran gambling lobbyist to the state board that regulates the industry, raising concerns about potential conflicts of interest from government watchdogs. Marisa Shorenstein, who served as head of Hochul's transition team when she became governor, was tapped as commissioner on the New York Gaming Commission despite her dad's clients, including some with businesses before the board. Stuart Shorenstein has long been an active lobbyist and advisor to gaming firms and is currently listed as repping the Swedish internet gambling giant Evolution Malta, which is pushing to legalize online betting in New York. All right. Speaking of New York, there's some more. I know this is scary when I say this. There are some more potential criminal justice policies in Albany, but according to the Gothamist, they believe they are on shaky ground because of the backlash and really the overall dislike by most of 5 years of bail reform, not just in the law enforcement community, but those that are leaving the state because of public safety issues, the real fear that people have, not just in the city, but in upstate as well. A number of proposed laws that advocates say would make the criminal justice system more fair for people charged with crimes face an uncertain future in Albany as the Democrat-led State House grapples with backlash from critics who say reform measures have made New Yorkers less safe. And that's an interesting issue because, yes, obviously they're seeing the polling. Look what happened when Lee Zeldin campaigned for governor on public safety. It hurt Hochul. Yes, Hochul ultimately won, but you still have to keep that in the back of your mind because it did cost Democrats overall the House. So they've been paying attention and maybe not willing to take up more of these quote-unquote criminal justice policies. It'll be interesting, though, because, again, it is a supermajority in Albany, Democrat-led state house. Will they still push some of these through, as we've not even jokingly said, we've seriously said, that when Albany's in session, you get very nervous because you never know what virtue signaling policy will come out that makes us less safe, coddles criminals, and ties the hands of law enforcement. Two high-profile progressive laws that passed 5 years ago, bail reform and discovery reform. Can you imagine it's been 5 years? Having since sparked fierce criticism from law enforcement, tough-on-crime politicians, and I would argue maybe put a little more emphasis on this part, and New Yorkers concerned about the lasting effects of a pandemic-era crime spike. Oh, that's interesting. So they blame the crime spike not on these policies, according to the Gothamist. It's because it was a pandemic-era crisis. Okay. I don't know if I accept that, but that's what they would like you to believe. We've seen bail reform, and it's not just, as I mentioned, law enforcement that have been really highlighting the fact of how dangerous bail reform and discovery laws are and how many victims are now victims that did not need to be. Or we look at something like shoplifting that we've been talking so much about, which really has become an epidemic. There's no teeth to the policy, so these people get in trouble for shoplifting, they go right back. No problems. Before the ink's even dry on the police report, because they've been released, and then they wonder why businesses are closing up and leaving. The fatigue and the negativity around criminal legal system reform that was kind of built up over the past few years, I think, is making it more challenging than it should be or otherwise would be, said the program director at the Vera Institute of Justice. Well, I think a lot of it, too, is people see with their eyes. It's just like they could tell us everything's okay with illegal immigration. They could tell us everything's okay with inflation. But we see it with our own eyes. Same with public safety. We see it. We experience it. When we come back, we're going to tell you what Assemblyman Phil Palmisano had to say about a proposal in reduction in school aid, and then one poll or study, I should say, about New York, and then we're going to get into New Hampshire. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. We're just getting started. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Thanks so much for joining us. After we wrap up our discussion here on New York State issues, we're going to hear from Nicole Van Fleet from Guthrie about their upcoming Valentine's Ball. That'll be after that, and then we'll dive into New Hampshire. First, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano sent this out yesterday, and him and his Assembly Republican colleagues are voicing their opposition to the proposed reduction in funding for some New York schools and Governor Kathy Hochul's executive budget proposal. The governor has proposed ending hold harmless, it's called, a policy that ensures school districts don't see a reduction in their education foundation aid compared to the previous year. Now, under Hochul's plan, more than half the school districts located within the 132nd Assembly District, that's Assemblyman Palmisano's district, will see a foundation aid reduction. He said many school districts throughout the state, including those in the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes, rely on state aid to fulfill state-mandated educational requirements. We know salary, health insurance, and pension payment costs continue to rise over every year. We also know that our schools, and especially our kids, are still trying to recover from the COVID lockdowns and remote learning experience. This, coupled with other issues, has helped contribute to the growing mental health challenges our kids are experiencing in our local schools and communities. The governor knows this, and she knows this is certainly not the time to cut critical educational funding for our kids and school districts, especially our upstate rural schools. It is a shame Governor Hochul is proposing to hold their education hostage so she can divert resources to other priorities. And that's why I mentioned this, because I think it's a good point to start off with from the Assemblyman. But diverting those resources for other priorities. What are those priorities? Well, here we go from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Budgeting is all about priorities. The governor should be prioritizing funding for our kids and our local schools over migrants here illegally and the Hollywood elite. The governor has proposed giving $2.4 billion to fund migrants in New York City, continuing massive tax breaks to Hollywood elites, and removing consumer energy choices when it comes to how to heat your home, cook your food, and the car you drive, including mandating the purchase of costly, unreliable, and unproven electric school buses on local school districts and property taxpayers. Her priorities have made it clear she continues to be more focused on appeasing her far-left radical base than actually helping working New Yorkers. I urge my colleagues in the legislature to reject yet another misplaced priority from the governor and restore this critical funding to our local schools during the budget process. So thank you to Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. One last thing here, as we are just wrapping up a quick little discussion on New York State. According to a new study by WalletHub, we hear from WalletHub a lot, and unfortunately when we do, it's not normally good news for New York State, and I think many viewers can attest to what I'm about to say. New York is among the worst states to retire in 2024. New York is poised to become the 7th worst state in the U.S. to take up retirement in 2024. Now, who fared worse than us? I want to be fair, because we are 7th, which is, better than normal. Doing worse, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, Mississippi, New Jersey, and Kentucky, which landed in last place. So they base it on 3 key dimensions: affordability, quality of life, and healthcare. While New York ranked 10th place in quality of life and 12th in healthcare, New York was ranked the least affordable state, thus landing it among the worst states to retire. So really, yes, we're 7th in retirement, but we are ranked the least affordable state. So, it's not good news on both fronts. I guess one maybe a little bit better than others, but if you can really get down to the nitty gritty, we've got to take away the fact that it's about least affordable state. For reference, the cost of living in New York is 30% higher overall, than the national average, while sectors like housing are a staggering 78% higher than the rest of the country. Wow. Housing are staggering 78% higher than the rest of the country, while basic necessities like groceries and clothing are each around 12% more than the national average, according to apartment listing service Rent Cafe. So there you are. New York is among the worst state to retire in the year 2024. Now, when we come back, we are going to hear from Nicole Van Fleet. She's Guthrie's special event and annual giving officer. This is an amazing event that they have at Guthrie. It is called the Annual Valentine's Ball, and it sells out every year. It's kind of the social event of the season. And what's so amazing about it is it goes to benefit Guthrie's Corning Cancer Center. So we're going to hear all about that, what to expect from the event, and it's not too late to purchase tickets. It will sell out And keep in mind, the whole Corning Museum of Glass is pretty impressive. It will sell out, so you've got to be fast on that. There's other ways to donate, other ways to help. We'll find out about that in just a moment. If you're just tuning in, Nikki Haley did sweep the first New Hampshire primary votes in that midnight tradition at Dixville Notch. 5-decade-old tradition. No real surprise here. If you look at some of the past votes, maybe more, you could put moderate in Dixville Notch. Back in 2016, Trump lost to Kasich, for example. It should also be noted that the last time Dixville Notch predicted the outcome of a Republican New Hampshire primary was 2008 with John McCain. So, just wanted to give you that update. We are going to talk about New Hampshire, what you need to know as you follow tonight. What does it mean? I'd love to ask you personally. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. What do you think this means for Nikki Haley? Is it a DeSantis scenario where if she doesn't win, comes in second, obviously she's got to come in second, I'd hope, comes in second, will she say, I'm not suspending my campaign? Because she does want to make it to South Carolina. And Governor Sununu saying that they really just want to make it to Super Tuesday, and that's when they think they could rack up some wins. But if she doesn't have a big showing tonight, potentially beating Trump or coming very close, will the donors be there? Now, she says she has saved and scrimped to make it through South Carolina because she feels, being former governor there, that she will do a good job in South Carolina. But then you see Tim Scott, also South Carolina, endorsing Trump. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic. So really tonight, as many have said, is make or break. But will she have the stamina to continue when it comes to funding, donations? So your thoughts. What do you predict for tonight? What do you predict if Nikki Haley does not have a strong showing, or I mean a real strong showing, or maybe Trump has a weak showing? What do you expect after the results come in? We've got to take a break. When we come back, we have an interview with Nicole Van Fleet. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and joining me in that studio is Guthrie's Special Event and Annual Givings Officer. Nicole, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Everybody's talking about it, especially around here in Corning. Tell us about Guthrie Corning's Valentine's Ball.
We are so excited to have the Valentine's Ball again this year. It is Saturday, February 10th, and it is held at Corning Museum of Glass, which is such a great location. The Valentine's Ball is a fundraiser. It is the biggest and premier fundraiser for Corning Hospital and for the Corning Cancer Center specifically.
And we were talking out there, it's been 21 years?
Yes, this is the 21st annual. We're so excited to keep that tradition going and bring those funds into the Cancer Center that are so needed. And
I want to talk about the Cancer Center in just a moment, but it does seem like this has become kind of the social event of the year, hasn't it?
Yes, we're very excited. Tickets are wonderful. They're flying out the door, so if you're interested in coming, we encourage you to get your tickets soon.
And I'll get all that information in just a moment. But tell us about Guthrie's Corning Cancer Center.
The Cancer Center in Corning is a pretty special place. So over the years in doing the Valentine's Ball, we have been able to come in contact with some patients that have had experiences at the Cancer Center, and they're incredible. And their stories are incredible. I think the biggest thing that comes out of their story is they start very afraid. They come into the Cancer Center with a very scary diagnosis. And through their journey, they make a family out of the people that are there to take care of them, their nurses, their clinicians, right down to the folks that check them in when they come in the door. So that is a storyline that we see often and very heartwarming.
Well, and that's why I wanted to mention the reputation of the staff at Corning Cancer Center is just remarkable.
It is. It's kind, from bringing soup to patients to homemade blankets to just the kindness that people show and the strength when they can ring the bell and their treatments are over. It's a very special place.
Isn't that nice? How does the ball help support Guthrie Corning Cancer Center?
All the proceeds from the Valentine's Ball actually support the Guthrie Corning Cancer Center. Over the years, we have brought in a good amount of money for that Cancer Center and to support those patients and from all sorts of different things.
How can a business, or maybe myself, an individual, support this cause, the Corning Valentine's Ball?
We are excited. We have a lot of sponsorship opportunities at the ball. This is a sellout event, so there are a lot of folks there that are there to support the Cancer Center, and businesses get amazing recognition for their sponsorship. Plus, it's just for a great cause. So we're very excited to offer those. We have sponsorship levels all the way from $1,500 up to $10,000. So really, there's a level for anybody.
And I think the fact that you sell out the museum every year goes to speak to how much fun, how important this specific Valentine's Ball is.
It's great. I mean, people come in and they really feel the love. They see the impact. We share a wonderful video every year that really shows the impact of the Cancer Center, so they feel really good about their donations. They feel really good about sponsorships and ticket sales. And then they have great food, and they get to dance to a great band, and it's a really, really good night.
It's coming up on February 10th. As you said, it will sell out, so get your tickets ahead of time. Is there anything else that people should know about?
If you're interested in tickets, you can visit our website at www.guthrie.org/Valentine's Ball. You'll find all your information there, and you can get your tickets and your sponsorships.
Well, thanks so much. I know you're going to have fun at the ball, so thanks for being on the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thanks again to Nicole Van Fleet from Guthrie for being our guest this morning. Here is information. Oh, I made it a little low. I apologize. That is the website right there if you would like to find out more about the Valentine Ball. Let's see. A little better? Little, still kind of small, but you get the idea. Guthrie.org/Valentine Ball. So thank you again to Nicole Van Fleet for being on the program. All right, let's get to New Hampshire, shall we? We already mentioned that Nikki Haley won the Dixville Notch midnight vote, 6-0. So we could go through the history if you want. I'm not particularly interested in doing that, unless you want to. New Hampshire state law passed in 1975 requires that its primary be conducted before any other state. That's interesting that they could do that. This is the important point. Registered Republicans and Democrats vote in their own primaries. But it's important to highlight that in New Hampshire, independent voters can also take part by asking for either a Republican or Democrat ballot. And that's why Trump had been highlighting the fact that Nikki Haley would be depending on that. Now, there's a piece in the New York Post today that said that's not something to criticize Haley for. That's something almost commendable, that it's a smart move. But depending on independent voters. As we know, Joe Biden is not on the Democrat primary ballot because of some party infighting with the state type of thing. But there is a push for a write-in campaign. Right now, according to polls, Trump is the clear frontrunner and holds 50% support among likely Republican primary voters in the Granite State. It says here his closest competitor, of course, Nikki Haley, stands at 39%. Both have gained support since the poll in early January, as the field of major contenders has shrunk. Now, there's not a lot of delegates at stake. It's just really almost more about momentum. You got Trump winning Ohio, than New Hampshire. So it's really more about getting the momentum. New Hampshire's primary and the results get a lot of scrutiny because they come first, but there are only relatively few delegates on the line. Ultimately, it is winning delegates that secure primary nominations, of course. New Hampshire gets 22 delegates in the Republican primary process, less than 1% of the total delegates who will vote at the convention this summer. Now, how is their track record? New Hampshire's primary has been the site of some poll-defying upsets, such as when then-Senator Gary Hart unexpectedly won the Democrat primary back in 1984, or when John McCain beat George W. Bush in 2000. It has a pretty good track record of picking the Republican nominee. Only 3 times since the 50s has the winner of the New Hampshire primary not gone on to be the Republican nominee. In 2 of those years, 64, when Henry Cabot Lodge won the primary, and 96, when Pat Buchanan won. Republicans ended up losing the general election. Now, we're not going to go into why Biden isn't on the ballot on the Democrat side. It's kind of complicated. They wanted South Carolina to go first, meaning the Democrat National Committee, which they believe is a more diverse base of Democrat voters. That could have been almost a reward from Biden, too, saying we want this because that's what put Biden on the path to winning the nomination last go-round, because if you recall, in Iowa, he had a poor performance and did not look as if he was going to be the nominee, and then South Carolina saved him. So was it a thank you? Was it a let's get this out of the way in case there is a challenger? Now, there is technically a challenger, and I don't know, must not be that difficult to get on the presidential ballot there. There are 21 names on the Democrat ballot. One of those, of course, is not Joe Biden. Probably the most well-known, Marianne Williamson, and Representative Dean Phillips. Dean Phillips has been getting some attention. Andrew, what was it? I just drew a complete blank on his name. Yang, right? Yeah. Sorry about that. He just endorsed Phillips. But I remember when Phillips made the announcement, it was kind of interesting at first and really fell off the radar with any type of real traction. But I'm not going to go through all the names, but there's 21 on here, and maybe some of the more interesting names at least. And I don't know. One person's name is President R. Bodie. He's already got president in his name. Why wouldn't you vote for him? This is on the Democrat side, by the way. President R. Bodie from Atlanta, Georgia. Another interesting name. I'm not going to read all of them. I thought this was an interesting one. Towards the bottom, Paperboy Love Prince from Brooklyn, New York. So Paperboy Love Prince is on the Democrat ballot in New Hampshire. And another one that you may remember this name, Vermin Supreme. Was Vermin Supreme the same candidate? No, a different candidate than the rents too darn high, we'll say, guy. Vermin Supreme, I think, runs every go-around. On the Republican, there are how many? There's got to be about 21 here, too. No names that I necessarily recognize. Oh, here's one. Mike Pence is on the ballot there. Still, Ramaswamy's still there. Tim Scott. So a lot of the names are still on there. But none that I necessarily recognize as kind of odd, like the Democrat. Now, could Biden still win the New Hampshire primary? There is an organized write-in campaign because they realized they made a mistake just for optics on that it does not look great if the incumbent doesn't win the state, even though most people will know by then that he wasn't on the ballot. Still, regardless of who wins, no delegates will be awarded based on the results of the contest because it violates the Democrat Party's scheduled rules. The National Party changed the nominating schedule to make South Carolina's contest the first primary and is penalizing New Hampshire Democrats for not delaying theirs. That is according to CNN. While New Hampshire has a long-standing state rule requiring its primary to take place first, Granite State Democrats have chosen to stick with the state-run primary instead of trying to schedule a separate vote that would comply with DNC rules, as that's what Iowa did. All right, so 6 things to watch according to CNN when it comes to New Hampshire today. Does Haley's big bet pay off? Yes, she did focus a lot on New Hampshire. She's hoping to have a good showing so she can then go to South Carolina with perhaps some momentum. It's fueled in part, and it was a smart move. I'm not going to disagree. Whatever you think of it on the maybe party level, she has been courting, if you will, independents because they have the undeclared voter that can vote in the primary in New Hampshire. And I don't know if courting is even the right word, but she needs those voters, and she's aware of that, and has maybe spoken more to them than you would normally typically expect. For Haley, polls, including national and early state surveys, have long found that she appeals most to moderates and Republicans eager to move on from Trump. I think there's no surprise there. I would say more moderates, perhaps. She's also been helped by the endorsement of Sununu, himself one of the most prominent anti-Trump voices within the Republican Party. Now, a home state gubernatorial endorsement has its limits. If you remember, DeSantis had the support of Iowa's Kim Reynolds and still, quote-unquote, flopped, according to CNN, which is interesting that they would put that in just a news article. Now, Sununu has been downplaying because they set the bar really high, originally saying that she was going to win New Hampshire outright because they put so much focus on New Hampshire. Now saying, I've always said you wanted a one-on-one race going into Super Tuesday. I think Super Tuesday is probably where you actually have to start winning states. So now it was, we're going to have a really good showing in New Hampshire. Now it's, hey, never mind any of that. Super Tuesday is where you really got to start winning states. So will she be able to last? That's a question I pose to you. Will Nikki Haley, if she does not have a great performance tonight, or does even have a good performance, will she get the fundraising? She says she has the money to go to at least South Carolina, that she's budgeted for that, if you will, because she wants to go to her home state. And she said she will absolutely remain in the Republican presidential race through South Carolina's February 24th primary. Wow, so we're going to have to wait a month. Just in general for the next vote. South Carolinians know I won that state twice, she said. They know I'm a fighter. They know I'm going to go all the way through. I'm also an accountant. So we saved a lot of our dollars to make sure we could be strong in South Carolina. But again, if you remember, DeSantis said that he was going to stay in after Iowa and suspended his campaign on Saturday or Sunday. However, and this is what CNN highlights as well, presidential candidates rarely admit that the end is near. DeSantis, after all, said he was in the GOP race for the long haul just a week ago. Now, if Trump wins, he would make history in modern presidential campaign history since the Iowa caucuses began serving as the official kickoff, followed by the New Hampshire primary. No non-incumbent Republican has won both states. And in doing so, he would make it much tougher for Haley to convince donors to pour money into her campaign and voters to stick with her for the month until South Carolina. Yeah, donors, and I would also say volunteers. I don't think you can downplay volunteers. She'll miss her only shot at another win before then because Haley filed to run a Nevada state-run primary instead of competing in the state GOP-run caucus. Delegates are awarded through the Nevada caucuses. Now, they said another thing to watch for, where did DeSantis' support go? I don't think there's too much surprise there. A little bit to both, more so perhaps Trump is what it's looking at. And they're putting it equally bad, meaning did Nikki Haley's attacks because Trump attacks so equally bad, two wrongs don't make a right kind of thing is what they're trying to present. Did her attacks on Trump work? Well, time will tell, of course. She has been questioning Trump's mental fitness. As a matter of fact, I think it's disgraceful that CNN actually has the audacity, as we've seen them coddle the current President Biden, to say that we should be concerned about the red flags that Nikki Haley has been highlighting. That, to me, is a sign that Nikki Haley is speaking to, it's not a knock on Nikki Haley. This is just what I'm seeing. She is speaking to the media, doesn't want to see a Republican win, speaking to the independents and the like, because when you have CNN going, yeah, what Nikki Haley said, not necessarily a good sign for, I was going to say for Republican, but she's being presented as a moderate Republican. So I'm not saying anything out of school. Now, they're asking the question, will Haley heed the advice from Trump aides? Top Trump campaign aides Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles sent a reports memo on Sunday saying that Haley must win New Hampshire's primary, citing past comments from Haley and her supporters, including Sununu, predicting her victory. And I think there is a good point there. They did predict her victory. LaCivita and Wiles said that if Haley does not win Tuesday, she has two options. Either she drops out, unites behind President Trump, and commits to defeat Joe Biden, or she prepares to be absolutely, and I quote, demolished and embarrassed in her home state of South Carolina. And there you go. There's things to look out for. We've got to take another short break. Stay with us. This is, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, make your predictions. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. We'll be right back. Our beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. This is Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Great question from a viewer. And I would pose the question to you as well. I wonder who Nikki will endorse if she eventually drops out. I think you could make the argument that because she worked for him, she could endorse Trump. I could maybe see her not endorsing, but that is a bad look for future potential races when you don't coalesce behind the nominee. So really, you only have Trump. You either go Trump or you don't endorse. So there's only really one option for endorsement. But I think she could endorse Trump without, while being able to save face. I don't think she's had some attack lines recently saying that there's chaos that comes with him and the 80-year-old. But I think you can kind of twist that into being able to support Trump in the long term, if that's what she wants to do, or unless she wants to become kind of a poster child for moderate Republicans and kind of, I'm not going to say anti-Trump or never Trump, but kind of, Trump critics. If she wants to go down that avenue, it does lead, as you see, unfortunately, lead to a lot of jobs in the mainstream media. If I don't know if that's where I'm not trying to be that critical of her. I don't have the answer there, but I think it's a wonderful question. Because if DeSantis can ultimately endorse Trump with some of the things DeSantis said, I think it shouldn't be. And really, if you want to go back to 2016, Ted Cruz, I think you can make the case that it wouldn't hurt her. Perhaps not even hurt her as much as if she doesn't endorse. Now, they say that the Biden campaign is watching Nikki Haley's New Hampshire performance closely. Well, I would hope so. I mean, what they're saying is she's the last wall between Trump being the president. If she goes away, then they can focus really their campaign on attack Trump, which they've already done, but even more so. So Trump told supporters yesterday night, every day the Republican Party is becoming more and more unified. We started off with 13 opponents, and now we are down to 2 people, and I think one person will be gone probably tomorrow. He had a heck of a campaign rally. He brought out everybody. Who was it? He had Ramaswamy was there, Doug Burgum, Tim Scott. He congratulated Tim Scott on his recent engagement. But I know I mentioned this before we go to break. No, let's go to break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. This is the article I was telling you about, just to show you what we're dealing with the media. What they'll do is either not bring up something that they know would be detrimental to, let's say, a Biden or a Democrat, or they'll mislead you and almost act as if they reported on something when they didn't. You look at it when Hunter Biden's laptop information came out. Many of these news outlets had to report on it for the first time and give that whole background. Well, Dean Obeidallah from CNN said, Nikki Haley's right. Red flags about Trump's mental fitness can't be ignored. And again, it always makes me concerned when a Republican is used in a way like this to badmouth another Republican when the media is so giddy about it. That always, to use his term right there, raises red flags. But listen to what he said and tell me if this feels accurate to you. Haley is 100% correct to raise red flags about Trump's cognitive abilities. The President of the United States must be mentally fit to do the job. To be clear, Haley also raised questions during her campaign event about President Joe Biden's potential cognitive issues. Now, here we go. Tell me if this feels accurate. But to be blunt, those issues, meaning Biden's potential, as I said, potential cognitive issues, but to be blunt, those issues, as well as concerns about Biden's age, have been litigated extensively in the media, which allows voters to make up their own minds on the subject. By contrast, Trump has been subjected to much less scrutiny about his mental acuity, despite a series of mental gaffes that led conservative television host Megyn Kelly to raise alarm bells last month. So they're concerned about the fact that he confused the name, basically Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley. That's what this whole article is based on. But were you aware, I'm asking you this seriously, were you aware that number one, Trump hasn't received a lot of scrutiny in the media, and number two, that the media really highlighted what could be potential cognitive issues with the current president, Joe Biden? Extensively is the exact term that is being used by Dean Obeidallah. So the media extensively showing you the issues that many people have with current President Joe Biden's mental fitness. Interesting. I wonder how many articles about President Biden's mental health, perhaps issues, not mental health, mental fitness issues, Dean Obeidallah wrote. Just out of curiosity, I wonder if it comes up a lot. I just found that to show you a little bit about what we're dealing with when it comes to the media. Also saying, true, these conservative media outlets may be reticent to cover negative stories about Trump out of fear of potentially upsetting their viewers. But this is an issue that transcends partisan lines. Yes, it transcends partisan lines. Wondering about a mental fitness issue with a potential president, or let's say current president. I'm glad he feels that way now, almost 4 years into a president's term. If there's anything that outweigh party identity, it's our collective concern about the potential threat posed to our nation by a future president who might not be able to be doing the job mentally of being commander-in-chief. I like how you have put future president there, huh? Not current or potentially future president. I wonder if we will see this exact same piece about Biden. Just out of curiosity, love to hear your take on it. We got to take our last break. Stay with us, then we're going to wrap things up here on Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Hagan. Boy, we've covered a lot. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just about out of time. Hallie's not getting complete kid glove treatment. Clyburn suggested that Hallie is using a dog whistle by saying she fears a President Harris. When I saw that come from Nikki Haley, I was very, very disappointed, because that, to me, is a dog whistle. This is all about someone trying to instill fear in people who fear Kamala Harris. She is nobody to fear. She's a red-blooded American woman who has preparation that few women have, and she ought to be treated with dignity and respect. And I really feel that this is a source of basic, just not goodness. That's James Clyburn. Jamie Dimon, who I mentioned the other day, saying, hey, things weren't that bad under Trump, and you shouldn't be going after his supporters the way you do Democrats. You're going to be in some trouble. The New York Post editorial board said Jamie Dimon's MAGA warning to Democrats is right on target. Since we're out of time, fast forwarding here, Democrats continue to ignore these issues and to treat Trump supporters with contempt at their own peril. He's saying something his few Democrat elitists need to hear. Voters had and still have real reason for choosing Trump. Dismissing them as nothing but backwater bigots is itself hateful and ignorant, and a quick road to defeat. Did you see, by the way, immigration has now surpassed inflation as the top voter concern? Many blaming, of course, are saying it's worse under Biden. 35% of registered voters now rank immigration as the country's #1 concern, jumping just 7 points since last month. Now, worries over price increases and the economy weren't far behind, with 32% citing inflation as the most pressing issue in the U.S. and 25% listing the economy and jobs as the top concern. Nearly 2 in 3 voters, 64%, said that the immigration problem at the border is getting worse under President Biden's leadership, and the vast majority, 77%, want the Biden administration to make a deal with Republican lawmakers that would increase border security. Also, his handling of the border crisis has resulted in 46% responding they are less likely to vote for the 81-year-old incumbent in 2024, and 30% saying that it had no effect on their vote. Thank you, everybody who joined us. Thanks for all the waves. Thanks for all the comments. Have a great morning. Tomorrow we'll be talking, or have a great day. Have a whole great day. Tomorrow we'll be talking about the New Hampshire results and much more. So I hope you'll tune in every weekday morning starting at 7 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, have a great day, everyone.